It's a summer savings finale with Dell's Labor Day sale. Get hot deals on some of the newest computers and gaming systems with Intel Core processors, plus save on top brand electronics and accessories, all with free shipping on everything. Visit Dell.com/Labor Day or call 800-BUY-DELL. That's 800-BUY-DELL.
The Fantasy Focus Football Podcast is presented by ZipRecruiter. Hiring used to be hard. Multiple job sites, stacks of resumes, a confusing review process. But today, hiring can be easy with ZipRecruiter, the highest rated hiring site in America. And now our listeners can try it for free at ZipRecruiter.com/06010. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire.
Fantasy, you in the 06010.
Welcome into the Fantasy Focus Football Podcast. My name is Bill Yates, alongside Matthew Berry and Stefania Bell. Stefania and I coordinate our outfits today. Purple Day.
We did. Pink and purple.
For those watching us on Twitter, follow at Fantasy Focus. Well, you probably are already following at Fantasy Focus, which is a great way to interact with us through polls and any kind of questions you may have. And, of course, watch the stream live every single day. You can also find it on demand at periscope.com, or is it periscope.tv/ESPN? That was bad radio by me. Periscope.tv/ESPN.
Also not actually radio. But
bad podcasting
but I mean,
by me.
Just to open up the curtain a little bit, if you weren't watching live, you missed me taking a drink of water. You missed me putting in my head, my earpiece,
IFB, yes.
my IFB, my earpiece. I mean, like, there's exciting stuff that you're missing by watching us live. I'm just saying. By the way, Stefania, you do look lovely today. Field, you look lovely. I'm the schlub of the show.
You look good.
I look like Daniel.
A nice collard green shirt Matthew Berry's wearing today.
Whoa. I did my hair nice today.
It's true.
I have a very nice t-shirt on. I'm wearing jeans.
How is this different from...
Well, he's wearing pants. He's wearing pants. That's an exciting thing. Not Cool Keith is here. He brought all of his children here. I think Not Cool Keith, if I may, for one quick second here before we get into the football, we've got a huge show coming up today. Stefania is going to give her injury concern level on all the players who are about ready to draft. But Not Cool Keith, if I may, the thought process behind bringing your beautiful children in is like just basically, hi, kids, they're waving to me. Is the idea that like they'll see me and they'll be like, oh, it could be so much worse at home. Is this just an idea to like make you look better at home as a dad?
100%. I've definitely been in the doghouse for years.
Right.
So I'm thinking, who can I bring in? Who can I have them see that say, you know what? Dad's not so bad after all.
Very smart. Very smart play. Absolutely. You kids are very
lucky. It has nothing to do with the fact his wife is back to work because, like many others, when the school year gets going, of course, work year picks back up as well. Today's a special
nothing
show.
To do with that.
Today's a special show because we're going to go through, it's a Stefania Bell heavy show, which is a good thing. I think many would agree that the more Stefania, the better. We've got a lot of players that are dealing with injuries, and Stefania is going to assess them on a concern level. And Stefania, you've developed a very scientific scale to measure your concern.
I have, really. You know, we were talking about this last night as a group, Daniel and Kyle and I, in terms of how to rate these, because there's injury concerns that you have for a player going into the season based on what happened last year. Were they injured last year? What happened in the offseason? Did they have a procedure? How ready are they to start the season? But then there's also the element of their global injury history. So guys who've had chronic injuries throughout their career obviously raise the concern level a little bit more than guys who may have had a single injury, like a David Johnson, one big injury, but he's just had one. So most scales are 3, like mild, moderate, severe, grade 1, grade 2, grade 3. In medicine, It's always this scale of 3. So I was like, let's be different. Let's be crazy. Let's make it a scale of 4. So I gave Daniel and Kyle the numbers 0, 1, 2, 3 and said I would use them. And Kyle came up field with a descriptor for each of these numbers. So the concern level, if you will, if I rated a player at my concern level is 0, that's equivalent to Field Yates, meaning everything's perfect, everything's in place, spot on, punctual. There's not a worry to be had.
Probably a guy that wakes up and makes his bed.
That's exactly right.
At the hotel
Comes
room.
to work prepared.
Have I told you, Stefania, that you are the best in the business? Recently?
Right, exactly.
Well,
this is a guy that probably that looks both ways before he crosses the street, watches what he eats, shaves his chest, All the things
No,
that
I
you
don't shave my chest. I don't need to shave. There's nothing to
It doesn't
shave
need-
on my
nothing to
chest.
shave.
Dresses
I keep forgetting.
nicely. Yeah, you
Hasn't
got
hit puberty yet. All those things. I get it.
So
I
you have
understand.
no
And Field
worries.
Yates,
Like, if
no
Field,
worries.
If Field
In
Yates
the-
is your son, you have no worries in life.
in the
Everything
prime
is
of his
good.
life.
Right. And now,
Wide open future ahead of him.
if
Right.
a 1 level of concern
Okay.
means you have a little concern.
Right.
It's a Matthew walking around the ESPN campus level of concern.
It's a big campus.
You never
we
know
all
what
know
can
that
happen
Matthew
there.
doesn't hustle, but if you saw him trying to get from one end of the campus to the other, you'd be concerned about whether he could actually get there.
I mosey.
Saunter.
I'm a
You
mosier.
saunter. You
I
mosey.
saunter. I waddle.
This
I'm a
next one
mosier.
confuses me, though.
Yeah,
This next,
I know because it's not really based on reality,
Right, I don't
but
get
it's
it.
it's a
That's
score
concerned.
of 2.
So it's like basically a 1 is somebody that
No,
like
no,
I'll
we get
get
that.
there, but like I'll probably be out of breath by the time I get there.
No, we
like it'll be
understand.
fine.
We're saying the next one doesn't
the
make
next
sense.
level of
Right.
concern, number 2, or
Yeah.
moderate level of concern, Matthew at the gym. Now, we didn't say he was actually working out at the gym field. We just said he was at the
Just
gym.
actually- that
At
makes
the
more
gym.
sense. Okay,
so
got
now,
it.
if you were to walk
I just-
into the gym, you'd be worried, like, what could happen if Matthew were to actually try and do something at the gym?
You know,
I just got-
stationary machines were made for Matthew. Like free weights, stay away because you never know what could happen. You can
Right.
drop a dumbbell on a toe
Right.
and be
And
out
then
for
you're
8
out
months.
for exactly.
Right.
So
I'm
some
getting
risk.
cold sweats just thinking about this.
And then number 3, like, just stay away. This is somebody that won't make my draft list. Doesn't mean that the potential isn't there. Doesn't mean that it might not be worth something to someone else. But these are people, athletes whose injury history frightens me relative to what they can produce. In other words, Matthew at the NFL Combine.
Wow.
Wow, that's a scary thought. So like,
If he were lining up to do the 40, he'd pull a hammy in the blocks.
yeah, that
Like,
was that.
he wouldn't even come out. So
Listen, I mean, I'll be honest with you. When I do the 3-cone drill, it's basically ice cream. I was trying to think of a Stefania joke there, and
Yeah,
I
it
couldn't
didn't
come
work.
up with
It
it.
felt
Just
flat.
hit the buzzer.
yeah.
I was trying to, yeah.
She's not a cone. She's your favorite gal. She's Stefania Bell.
I'm going to talk to the NFL Combine though, because it would be great if when they did the 3-cone drill, we put Stefania's face on the 3
Stop it.
cones.
Stop it.
Because you are a cone. All right, but
About
fair
how-
enough. That's
well,
fair enough.
you know,
That's
the
I
other
mean, like
days-
I would die at the NFL Combine. Let's be
you know,
honest.
Matthew, the other day, Stefania said how she goes to boxing classes and envisions
Yes.
Matthew's face on the bag.
True.
If we put Stefania's face on the cone, we'd have world record setting cones because all the players want to run fast to impress the great
There
star
you go.
Fania Bell, where we
All right.
begin
Fields.
with Stefania
More money
on
for
our
Fields.
quarterbacks list. And it's a star-studded list at most positions, but none more so than quarterback Stefania. Let's begin with Deshaun Watson in Houston.
All right. I could start off easy. Concern level 0. I think he's proved enough in the preseason. We've seen how he looks. There's really been no hiccups with him. And we talk about, you guys certainly hear me talk about return to play as the final phase of rehab. He's gotten enough reps out in the preseason. I've seen him do things, seen him go down, bounce back up. He doesn't look like a guy who's coming off an ACL reconstruction at all. And that's how you know he's past it. No worries there.
Deshaun Watson, top 5 quarterback in our ranks. For those that are saying, why not ranked higher given Stefania's lack of medical concerns? I just say this. In order for him to be the number 1 ranked quarterback, he probably would need to be almost as good as he was last year, which was 27.2 points per game in his 6 starts. All right, there has not been a quarterback since 2013 to average more than 25 points per game. So historically great to be worth that top overall ranking at
I mean,
quarterback.
he I made this point last night. I did an event for New York City Radio, and the question came up about Watson. He is, last year his touchdown rate was 9.4. In the last decade, the best quarterback touchdown rate is Peyton Manning 9.9, his 50 touchdown season. NFL quarterback average, I believe, is 4.4. Yeah. So we expect regression from Deshaun Watson. We expect their defense to be a lot better. There was a lot of shootouts that Watson had. Having said that, he could regress a decent amount field and still be really, really good. My sort of take is, and I've had some people say, well, do you think he's RG3? Do you think he's somebody that had one magical year and is going to fall off the fantasy face? We have such a small sample size. It's hard to say. My take is he is a special player.
How about Carson Wentz, Stefania?
And we've talked about this recently. He's still not cleared for contact, and we're just running out of time. I think it could still happen. We don't know the detail of the conversations that are going on, but coming off a multi-ligament knee injury, players still not cleared for contact. And still, would you think of the scope of time since his surgery? Surgery was in December. So a lot less time to recover from a more complex knee injury than what Deshaun Watson had. He was injured halfway through the season, or fairly close to that. And Carson Wentz, although he's done a great job with his rehab, there's still, to me, a big hurdle to clear. And what you wonder, again, the concern level is not that he hasn't, quote unquote, healed from the injury, but that graft is still maturing. It takes a while for that to happen. And you have to stress it to what you do in the game. Even when he's ready to come back, is he going to be ready for 4 quarters of football? So I think it may take a while for you to get to the Carson Wentz who you're thinking about when you draft fantasy-wise.
The implication here, obviously, is that you have week 1 concerns, Stefania. And maybe more than that, but clearly you think it's no sure thing that he's ready in 9 days when the Eagles play.
I don't think they fully know.
I mean, your concern level is 2.
Right.
I mean, on a scale of 4. I mean, that's half. I mean,
Right.
when you have Deshaun Watson at a 0, Field, I lowered him in my ranks to QB 8 yesterday, partially because of this, partially because the skill players around him, and we're going to get to him later in the show, but Alshon Jeffrey already banged up. Jay Ajayi banged up. I mean, there's something that just makes me a little bit nervous. And again, we just talk about touchdown rate and regression, right? I mean, Carson Wentz's was almost 8 last year. It was 7 point something. I want to say 7.4, something like that. Thirsty Kyle looked that up for me. But I want to say it was 7.6, 7.4, something like that. Again, I think Carson Wentz is a special player, but I moved Andrew Luck ahead of him, Stefania. Do you think I'm crazy for that? I have Luck at 7,
I don't think you're
Wentz
crazy.
at 8.
I don't think you're crazy. And I just want to point out that this is not a setback with Carson Wentz. If you talked to me months ago, you know that I had said it was going to come down to the wire, and I think we're exactly where we should be. But Andrew Luck is the next guy on my list. And
that's what I did. That was a segue for you.
I know. I see how you teed that up. I put him into concern level 1, and only because we haven't fully seen everything from Andrew Luck yet. I don't have on our little sheet that we're using in the studio, I put an asterisk about if I was concerned for their availability at the start of the season. He doesn't have one. He's gonna play week 1. We did hear about this little foot injury that he sustained when he got tackled in the last preseason game in which he played. He would be playing if it were the regular season and they had a game this week. So he will sit out the final preseason game, as many of the starters will do. But Andrew Luck has shown he could take the hits, he can throw. He's scrambling. He's starting to look like his old self. Maybe a little rust is there, and that's more the concern. And also, Andrew Luck has had concussions in the past and other injuries because he gets taken down. So there's a risk there that's not necessarily related to the shoulder.
He finished quarterback 2 in 2014 and quarterback 4 in 2016. So I understand the people that are concerned about the injury, although Stefania hopefully appease some of those concerns. Beyond that, for Andrew Luck, I think some people are asking, well, look at the supporting cast around him. Not a great offensive line, not a massive running game, maybe at least established running game. And besides T.Y. Hilton, which wide receiver do you trust? I think my counterpoint would be, I hear where you're coming from, but it's not like Andrew Luck has played with Reggie Wayne and Marvin Harrison as his successor or his predecessor, Peyton Manning, did during their time together in Indianapolis.
I also like Jack Doyle, I think, more than most people do. Just from a talent perspective there. And by the way, I also like Ryan Grant more than people do. I mean, again, former Redskin, and I think he completely got jobbed by the Ravens. But Ryan Grant's a decent receiver. Again, maybe not. I mean, I think he's a decent deep flyer in fantasy.
Sure.
But yeah, I'm with you. I mean, again, I moved Andrew Luck. I have him at QB 8. I have him at QB 7. I have Wentz now at 8. So I have a little bit more confidence in Luck for the course of the season than I do in Carson Wentz. When you talk about all the players around him and not a lot of talent around him, do you feel like Stefania feels the same way?
About being on the podcast every day?
Yes, exactly. Just the talent around her. Just
next to her, perhaps.
People are wondering how does Stefania.
Her, maybe not so much.
Right. Interesting. All right. Fair enough.
Football season's almost here, and huge cash prizes are up for grabs at DraftKings, the leader in 1 week fantasy sports. DraftKings is hosting a fantasy contest for 1 week with $2 million up for grabs, and it's free to enter with your first deposit. Get the app or go to DraftKings.com now and use code FOCUS to play free with your first deposit in the Week 1 Play Action Contest. That's code FOCUS to play for your share of $2 million. Minimum $5 deposit required. Eligibility restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com for details.
I just want you guys to know if I won $2 million on DraftKings, I'd probably still come in and work with you guys.
Field and
Stefania, I would come in and still work with you guys.
There we go. That's much
You
more
come in
like
for a day.
Stefania, running backs also have there's a notable name of injuries on the running back list, I should say. And let's begin in Minnesota. Most people, I believe, say Dalvin Cook back injured in week 4. I'd imagine he's a 1 at worst.
Right. I actually have him as a 2. So this is 2 out of 3. Remember, there's 0 and then there's 1, 2, and 3. And I have him as a 2 out of 3, mostly because we haven't seen enough in the preseason for me to feel fully confident. As I think the ACL tears are particularly hard on the running backs. Why? Because that sharp stop, that deceleration, plant, and pivot is how ACL injuries happen. And this is what running backs have to do over and over and over again. Now, by all accounts, he's been looking great in practice, but we haven't seen him on the field in game situations barely at all. Played a few snaps, had 2 rushes for 1 yard, targeted once, didn't record a catch, and that's it. Normally, you would expect to see a player ramp up his activity. My question is, can Dalvin Cook, I think everybody talks about the workload he had last year and how great he was when he got hurt. No question. But is he going to come back and you think he's really just going to assume that level of productivity after so little game action and still kind of reacclimating that knee to playing in football, playing in a regular football game? We've heard about Latavius Murray maybe taking some of the work, and I think in the early games, that's entirely possible. So my level of concern is the position he plays, more vulnerable, coming off this type of injury, and being able to show us that he can get through 4 quarters. He's not going to fatigue or have soreness. We just don't know that.
And, by the way, playing behind a banged-up offensive line field. They're having issues there, too.
Yeah, they sure are. They just recently traded for Brett Jones from the Giants, I should say. A ton of injuries on the offensive line. Really the only roster blemish in Minnesota. I feel personally as though, I still am going to see Dalvin Cook go off the board by the end of round 2 in almost every draft, and I'm okay and I'm comfortable with it myself. I think it does lead to an important question, though, about handcuff running backs. Mm-hmm. I think there are 2 ways to categorize handcuff running backs. There are those that are most important because of the injury concerns in front of the players in front of them. In this case, Latavius Murray, important because of Dalvin Cook's injury. There are those who are most valuable because you think they're a really good player who just happens to be stuck behind an even better player. John Kelly in Los Angeles, for example.
Yeah.
They both are handcuffs. They both have different value. Speaking simply through the injury concern handcuffs, is there a more valuable one this year than Latavius Murray to you?
Maybe James Conner, just because Le'Veon Bell has dealt with injury issues in his past. Mm-hmm. And you're going to use a higher, obviously, whether you play in an auction format or a draft, it's going to cost you more draft capital to acquire Le'Veon Bell on your fantasy team than it will Dalvin Cook. But yeah, I think your point is well taken. I think Latavius Murray has standalone value, even if you don't have Dalvin Cook on your roster. I think he is going to be more of a timeshare than people think here. He's a very good goal line back. I want to say he's over the last 3 years. I think he's top 3 in the NFL. Thirsty Kyle, check me on this. I believe he is top 3 in the NFL over the last 3 years in terms of goal to go rushing touchdowns. Is that right? Thirsty Kyle's looking it up. He's a very good goal line back, and we talked about this a couple of days ago when we did the Vikings in Double Trouble field. Stefania, we talked about this, that the idea is, Latavius Murray wasn't healthy at the beginning of last year, and how much of the fact that Dalvin Cook got so much workload in those first, handful of games, the 3 or 4 games before he got injured, was because Latavius Murray wasn't really available.
Right. He was coming off of ankle surgery, and I think there was just this expectation he'd jump in and be fine, and he was still really working his way back for the first few weeks.
So, I don't think it's a full-blown committee field, but I think you could easily see, could it be a 70-30, a 65-35 split here with Latavius Murray getting more 50-50 at the goal line?
Matthew, I have Latavius Murray was number 1 over the last 3 years at goal to go. So
there you go. For me, he was top 3. I was right.
Look at that.
Nice job. Let's hear from me.
All right, Stefania. Other running backs, Saquon Barkley, Mr. Rookie this year, consensus top rookie in all formats. He has been dealing with a hamstring issue so far. What do we know about that, and what's your concern level out of 3?
Right, that's why he gets a 1 in my book, 1 out of 3, because he has not returned to full action yet. This is planned, right? You have a minor hamstring injury in the preseason. The team's not going to put you out there again when they want you ready for week 1. So I think if we were in the regular season, Saquon Barkley would be back playing by now. But they're obviously holding him back for the start of the year. They want him to be healthy then. We saw the burst from him in that when we got a glimpse of what he can do in that first preseason game in which he played. But we've seen him back at practice and he's running, so all signs point to him being ready. I'm not really worried, but you always have to have a little bit of concern in the background when it's a hamstring injury because it's so easy for that to recur during the course of the season.
Yeah, another one of those questions. I don't know that there is as much of a clear-cut handcuff for Saquon Barkley. Jonathan Stewart has a case. Wayne Gallman has a case. I still believe, though, with Saquon Barkley, the question people are going to ask is how soon is too soon? And I don't think anything after pick 6 is crazy at all for Saquon Barkley. Jerick McKinnon was
after pick 6. So you wouldn't take him at 6?
Sorry, pick 6 and beyond. It's good by me on the Saquon Barkley registry.
I agree with that. The fact that Stephania has you never like to see, to your point, soft tissue issues in the preseason, especially with a rookie who's yet to prove it. And you're sitting there with guys like Fournette or Melvin Gordon, Kareem Hunt, Alvin Kamara that he's getting picked ahead of. But I think he's a special player. And the fact that you have a concern level of just 1 makes me feel pretty good about Saquon Barkley.
Stephania, Jerick McKinnon was formerly a teammate of Dalvin Cook. He is now a beloved 49er for you. We have not seen him much this preseason since a calf injury, and we are not going to see him, no surprise, in week 4 of the preseason. What's your concern level?
Also 1 out of 3 for McKinnon, and same issue that you'll see repeated several times. Soft tissue injury in the preseason. He had a calf strain August 12th. He's back doing individual conditioning work. I expect he'll be back fully in practice before they go into the week 1 game. Kyle Shanahan's indicated that he expects McKinnon to be ready to play week 1. But again, the lingering little bit of concern, even though everything points to him starting, is a soft tissue injury before the start of the season. And until they fully test it in a game, you just can't really exhale. His teammate, Matt Breida, by the way, also dealing with an injury, an AC sprain. He too working on conditioning. He too is expected back for week 1, so I'd rate him as a 1 as well.
Good news there. I think the question really now is Alfred Morris going to be a thing in this San Francisco backfield? Because he did run hard in that last preseason game, and familiarity is obviously on his side in San Francisco with that Kyle Shanahan offense. You buy into the idea that he could be a factor for that running game, enough of a factor that it could impact McKinnon?
It's a concern, right? Yeah. Because he's certainly proven that he's got, he's certainly got something left. He's run well in the preseason games in which he's played so far. And I think it's got to make Kyle Shanahan feel good that they have him available there to add to their running back depth. But do I think if McKinnon gets healthy and is McKinnon to me is the ultimate PPR threat because I think he's going to catch so many balls. I think the offense is going to be designed to support volume for him no matter what.
Really interesting one. We'll see. First of all, I think it'll be interesting to see if Alfred Morris sticks around in the active roster. Mm-hmm. Like I know I'm suggesting he could be a factor, but I also want to see him clinch a week 1 spot. If he does, really interesting to see how that impacts that backfield. Let's get to a pair of Patriots, Stephania, and begin with Sony Michel. The good news is he has returned to practice after an extended absence. What do we know about that knee injury, and what's your concern level for him?
Well, he had a procedure done on his knee, and whenever you hear about having a procedure done that involves swelling of the knee, you think, okay, there's fluid in the joint. And usually fluid is there because something is irritating the knee. It's not so much a question of Sony Michel being able to return for week 1 that gives me this concern level of 1. I mean, there's a question mark about whether he'll definitively be available, but it seems to be that he has enough time to get there for week 1. My concern would be throughout the season. If you have something that's causing swelling within the joint, is this going to be a problem that once he starts running and pounding, maybe it goes down an awkward way on the field? Is it going to recur and be a problem for him as the season progresses? Are we going to see something that takes him out again later? As far as his teammate Rex Burkhead, he's also dealing with something in his knee that's got him sidelined right now. And although there's no indication that it's anything serious, I don't know that we can count on Rex Burkhead right away at the start of the season. So just keep your eye out for him. Remember, the Patriots are very good about managing their players until they're sure they're ready to go. And if they hold them out, if we don't see Rex Burkhead doing much before week 1, I'd be a little bit nervous. So Sony Michel coming back into practice now, I think tells us something about where these two running backs are.
James White and Jeremy Hill, big DFS plays in week 1, right?
Honestly, beyond that, I'm starting to think that James White might have a more consistent role through the course of the season. If you watch the Patriots in preseason, we've seen basically 3/4 of Tom Brady on the field. And it feels like almost every drive has been with James White, or at least the drives that have been successful. Such a vital part of their passing game. And as we talked about on yesterday's show, the wide receiver group is razor thin there right now in New England. I'm not opposed to James White landing on the late round draft radar, even if it's only for a short period of time. Like, think about that. There are other players that we consider worthwhile waiver claims if they last for 3 or 4 weeks. If James White gives you 3 to 4 weeks of value at the beginning of the season and then stays on your bench on a just-in-case basis, to me, pretty reasonable pickup right there.
Yeah, and let's not forget Rex Burkhead missed some time with injuries last year as well, so there is that to consider.
James White is currently going as running back 40 in the 12th round field.
I like it.
I mean, I like the call quite a bit. I think he's going to be more involved than people think. Look, we know Tom Brady likes to throw short. I mean, like he's somebody that has used, whether it's Edelman near the line of scrimmage, whether it's James White, whether it's Dion Lewis, Rex Burkhead some last year. I mean, he has traditionally used his running backs in the passing game quite a bit. It's a focal point. It's the kind of thing Josh McDaniels likes to do in terms of creating mismatches. So I like that call quite a bit.
I'll just say this. I still think that Sony Michel is the potential league winner in this backfield. I just think the ability to impact the game as a pass catcher plus explosive plays as a runner, I get it. He did not show a ton prior to getting injured, and he has been injured, and Stefania expressed her concerns. Amongst all the players that I think have the highest upside in that backfield, I do believe it's Michel. What do you got here, Keith?
He's currently going as running back 38. Burkhead's going as 29. We both, you and I and Stefania, all have Burkhead over Sony Michel. But I agree with you. Listen, when you start getting into those later rounds, and Sony Michel is currently going in the
11th, 10th, 11th,
something like that.
Right, running back 38. So
yeah, I mean, anyway, yeah, I mean, he's going in the 12th. 100%.
Keith, what do you got?
Yeah, Craig wants to know if there's long-term injury concern for Michel in dynasty leagues.
Stefania, we asked you.
Well, I think, Craig, thanks for the question. I think it goes back to what I was just talking about. If there is truly something, we call it intra-articular, like within the joint, that's problematic. If we see a couple of issues over the course of the season, then we're going to be more concerned for long-term. It's hard to know right now. Obviously, you're drafting right now. You're trying to draft for a dynasty league, and you're rolling the dice a little bit. But I would say all running backs have concerns for dynasty leagues. It's the shortest average length of time at the position in the NFL for a reason. They're just vulnerable to injury. But I think, as Field mentioned, the upside is there. So it's just a value question. How much do you want to spend, if you will, to take how much capital do you want to spend to take Sony Michel? But yeah, there's a little bit given the injury he's dealing with now.
Let's go back to Matthew's beloved Washington Redskins and Chris Thompson, who people I think have somewhat overlooked this injury, Stefania. He broke his leg last year in the middle of the season. I believe it was against the Rams, a dynamite beginning to 2017. What's your concern going into 2018?
It was a nasty injury. I have a concern level of 1 out of 3, and the reason being that they are feeling so good in Washington about how he looks right now. But this is a difficult injury. Ankle fracture, dislocation, had surgery, implanted. His injury was late. It was week 11, had surgery to put hardware in. And again, running backs, you have to be nimble. So getting your mobility back after having this type of injury and surgery, and then getting your confidence back. And I think you've heard a little bit of that from Chris Thompson himself when he spoke early in camp to reporters and said it would probably be November before he was 100%. I think what he was saying wasn't that he wasn't going to play before November, but understanding that he has to get used to getting tackled in a pile and getting over the fear of having something like this happen again. It's a very tough thing, and I don't think we give athletes enough credit for having to step right back into the situation where they had suffered a serious injury before. Right now, Jay Gruden said he looks great in his pass blocking and his running, the way he's hitting the hole. And I don't know if part of that is also a little confidence booster for Chris Thompson, like, you're looking great, and we expect you to be the guy. Remember, Samaje Perine got hurt. Wilson got hurt. So they brought in Adrian Peterson to do one thing, but Chris Thompson's their pass-catching back, and I think they expect to lean on him.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't believe Rob Kelly or Samaje Perine, one of those guys, I don't think makes the roster,
right.
because they're going to keep Byron Marshall and they're going to keep Capri Bibbs. Because
Marshall. Did I say Wilson?
Yeah. They're going to keep Marshall and Bibbs because of the concerns on Chris Thompson. As much as they love him, to your point, they need that pass catching back. And I think the thought process is that Peterson can handle the majority of the early down work, and then it'll be either Kelly or Perine. And my guess right now is that it's Kelly. that will be the backup to Peterson in terms of the early down work as they wait for Darius Geis to return from the ACL next year.
Could be Samaje Perine on the way out then in Washington. Deontay Foreman hasn't gotten a ton of run on this podcast, in part because Stefania, he's still hurt.
Yeah, he's coming off Achilles surgery, and there was a question about whether he'd be ready week one. He's had a couple bumps in the road in terms of his recovery, but I think now we're getting the sense from Houston that he is not going to be ready to start the season. That's why I put a 2 there. He could be back, at some point in the season and be really good. So it's not like a 3, like I wouldn't touch this guy. I think this is a tough recovery coming off Achilles surgery. It takes a while to get back up to your prior level of play. He's not somebody that I would necessarily be drafting right now, but when we're talking waiver wire fill-ins as the season progresses, that's a guy I would be looking for.
Really interesting. Lamar Miller is steady as it comes in terms of overall production and usage. He was heavily utilized last season as the primary back in Houston, and it kind of felt like everybody was waiting for Deontay Foreman to take over that role, and we were starting to see some signs of it.
He looked great when he got went on the field.
Yeah.
But to your point about Lamar Miller, currently going as running back 23, he's going in the 6th round.
Yeah.
I think he is a terrific draft day value because he is going to be sort of all they have, Field. Again, with last year in the 6 games that Deshaun Watson started, he averaged over 15 fantasy points a game.
Right.
He's a top 10 fantasy running back.
Right. But I still think like for the full season, he has got the same value that Frank Gore had during the tail end of his Indy career. Was like, it's never going to be blow you away good in a given week, but over the composite 16 game schedule, he might get you, 225 fantasy points, which would be definitely good enough to be a top 15 or so running back this year. I don't think he had more than 75 rushing yards in a game last season.
Right.
So again, limited upside in some ways for Lamar Miller. But unless and until Deontay Foreman returns and usurps his role, Lamar Miller is being underdrafted.
Barring injury, I believe, yes, he absolutely out-earns his current ADP of running back 23. No question.
Really interesting player here, Stefania. Rashad Penny, the Seahawks first-round rookie, broke his finger early on, or I guess somewhat midway through camp.
Right.
What do we know now?
Well, he went to Philadelphia to have a screw put in his finger, and the timeline that the Seahawks gave was 3 to 4 weeks, and you just never know how a running back's going to come back from that. Are they going to have issues with soreness? Is it going to be an issue for them, not just carrying the ball security, but being able to catch the ball, being able to block effectively? I mean, other things that you don't necessarily think about. And the Seahawks are notoriously optimistic when the info comes through Pete Carroll about when their players will return. Now, The latest is that Pete Carroll said he could potentially play in the last preseason game. So while I don't know that we're going to see him in that game, I think this definitely suggests that there are indications from the medical side in Seattle that Penny is nearing the ability to return. So I put him as a concern level 1 because we don't know for sure yet. And until we see him out there and know he's going to play, he's not a lock. But it sounds like he's making good progress. And in the scheme of things, this is not an injury that should be a long-term deal.
So the last part I really like to hear, Stefania, because I still believe, despite how strong Chris Carson has looked this preseason, how good he looked last season, I still feel like the intention of Seattle in drafting Rashad Penny was to make him their long-term starter.
Really? It's interesting because, I'm sitting here looking at the ranks right now. You have him at 27. I'm at 41. His ADP is currently at 35. So you and I have a wide range. I mean, I think we're the farthest apart on Rashad Penny.
Yeah, I have him a little bit. I did a rankings refresh early this morning, so I'm a little bit closer to where Stefania is at 33, but still, we're like 8 or 10 spots apart. Yeah.
I think Chris Carson's the real deal. Where do you have Carson? I guess that's my question.
I have Carson. I want to say at like 27 or so. Let me open these up right now. Football. Go to rankings.
See if I can beat you. Okay, hang on.
Race. And while you're there, tell me.
I have Chris Carson at 28. Field Yates, you have him at 28 as well.
Yeah. So now
Stefania has him at 27.
Right. Yeah. So I have Penny at 31. You have him at 41.
Right. Yeah, and I haven't fully updated my ranks either, but I think
it's close. I think that's a little bit of what you're saying between the two. I think Chris Carson's obviously going to start.
Yes. My concern on Rashad Penny is all the time he's missed. And I don't think, I think they see him as more of, at least at the moment, he'll get a chance maybe to prove himself, but I think they see him as more of a complementary back than maybe a true 3-down back. I think they like the physicality that Chris Carson brings. And I agree with you. I think they think Rashad Penny is talented, but they drafted him more because they thought he was talented and they needed running back depth. They weren't sure what they were going to get out of Chris Carson. So it'll be interesting how that plays out. I'm a Chris Carson believer.
I think that Rashad Penny ends up being the real deal for this backfield sooner rather than later. Last one of the running backs, Stefania, is Jay Ajayi.
I say Chris Carson has more fantasy points among Seattle running backs than Rashad Penny this year.
I'm good with that. I say Rashad Penny has the most fantasy points among Seattle running backs this season.
Put it on the board.
Put it on the board.
There you go.
Jay
Just
Ajayi.
want another one, Stefania. Just want another one. That's how it's done.
Mm-hmm.
That's how you make a bet, too.
Jay Ajayi.
See, I didn't try to weasel out of it. I'm just pointing that out for you.
Jay Ajayi for the Eagles, Stefania. We know that he has had injury concerns entering the league, but played well last year with Philadelphia for the most part. What's your concern on him right now?
Well, I actually rate him a level 2 out of 3.
Interesting.
And you know that I've talked about this before. Over the last 2 years, I've been worried about the condition of his knee and whether he would hold up to a lot of usage over time. This was a concern for him coming out of the draft. I think it was a concern for Miami. And we've seen it just with the style that he's played, it's either been a big, huge productive game and then several games in between where it hasn't been as much productivity. And I wasn't sure how he'd hold up being utilized consistently over a season. I'm not sure that last year really defines that for me either. Now you come into this season, he's been out of practice for over a week and nobody's really noticed it. It's been kind of under the radar and undisclosed lower body injury. That's all we're hearing. So it's really hard to evaluate that because that could be anything from the waist down. So, right now, a guy who's not practicing for over a week has some injury concerns. My level of concern being a 2 versus a 1, it has more to do with his ability to hold up over the season.
My big concern with Jay Ajayi is not necessarily just Stefania's concerns about the undisclosed lower body injury, but the fact that you've got Corey Clement, you've got Darren Sproles, you've got Wendell Smallwood. Josh Adams, an undrafted rookie out of Notre Dame, has made a lot of noise this preseason. Maybe he's more of a waiver wire, a practice squad candidate for them, but there's so many backs in Philadelphia that I've told people, I've still got him in my top 25 on running backs, but I don't find myself rostering Jay Ajayi very much so far through mock draft and early draft season.
I will say Corey Clement going as running back 51 in the 14th round is an insane value because there's, again, if Ajayi were to miss any time, I think Clement could easily be the guy. The other guys that you mentioned there, Smallwood, Sproles, they're all satellite players. Clement's the only other guy on that team, I think, at the moment that could potentially be a workhorse back for them.
From Kurt Sutter, the creator of Sons of Anarchy.
Where they been hiding you?
Stuck in state prison.
Comes an all-new FX original series, Mayans.
Can't ask you to do this unless I know you really want it. The club, the life, all in.
Whatever the club needs.
What happened to you?
You're the only one I can really trust.
You're in this now, son. No getting out.
Mayans premieres Tuesday, September 4th on FX.
Fantasy, you're in the 06010. Focus. Fantasy focus.
All right, Keith, let's bring it on back with a poll question. What do you got?
And before you get there, I'm just curious, just a quick update on the kids. Are they still paying attention, or are they on their phones now? Are they because my kids 10 minutes in would be on YouTube or playing games or something.
I banned the phones, but yeah, they're really not paying a whole lot of attention.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
Fair, smart, good.
I've
Your
been
kids
hearing
are like my kids.
behind me. I'm hearing. I am. But yeah,
no, they're not. They're on their phones, or they're watching
phones.
YouTubes or playing.
They're very well behaved children.
My kids love Roblox. That's what they're into these days.
Yeah.
Roblox, yeah, that's the big one.
Well, speaking of concern, I was concerned about these guys enjoying the show.
Yeah.
I'm no longer concerned about it.
All right, good.
But Tyler Kelly is concerned, and he wants to know if you could give us the latest on the update of Adam Schefter and his thumb, and also if he should move Field up in his reporter rankings as a result.
All right,
so why don't you handle the thumb injury here, Stefania?
Well, I of course I will, because I handled it as it happened. That was a breaking news moment. We were on TV for the Fantasy Football Marathon. Adam injured his thumb.
His texting thumb.
It was his left thumb. So I think he's a two.
He's a two-thumber. He's a two-thumber.
Because even though he had ice on it and was clearly in pain, did not slow down. Played right through the injury. But absolutely, Adam Schefter will be ready to go week 1. If you haven't noticed, he's texting just fine and tweeting just fine right now.
He is fine. So no, and I don't think Schefter. I don't think Field Yates is the handcuff to Adam Schefter.
What?
I mean, honestly,
That's
when you
crazy
think about Field Yates, who co-hosts this podcast, he does rankings for us. He writes the waiver wire column. He's part of Fantasy Football Now on Sunday. Honestly, like, I'm worried you're a little Ty Montgomery-ish. You're doing some fantasy. You're doing some insider stuff. You think about a Dan Graziano. You think about a Diana Rossini. I don't know.
Fields got age on his side. He's youthful. He's quicker.
I understand.
Quicker to the text and the tweet.
I'm merely saying that because the company sees Field as so versatile, I don't know. I don't know if they would want to, if something were to happen to Shefty. I don't know, Field Yates. How do you feel? What do you think?
I don't make decisions on who is people's handcuffs. I just do my job to the best of my ability.
Boy, it just sounds like right out of the Patriots.
There
right?
you go. Exactly. Field is on to Cincinnati. He is on to Cincinnati.
On to week 1.
On to week 1.
Well, I guess we are on to wide receivers then.
Yep.
Natural tee up there, and Stefania, we go to Seattle again, where Doug Baldwin has missed much of training camp. If not all of it, really. But the Seahawks, ever the optimist, as you said, seem to be pretty optimistic.
Right. I know. Pete Carroll saying he's going to be ready for week 1. He's increased his volume of work and practice. I still rate Doug Baldwin a concern level 1, and it goes back to the thing that put him on the injury list at the start of the preseason: knee soreness, and they immediately said he was going to miss multiple weeks. So that tells me that the reason they gave doesn't quite jive with the amount of time missed and the fact that he was taking it really slow for the first couple of weeks. Where's the concern? It's that it could come up again during the season. It appears that he's going to be ready to go week 1. We know the talent, and Doug Baldwin's been a very durable guy across his career. But these things, once they start, especially with the knee, sometimes it can be something that nags at you as the season progresses.
Traditionally a slow starter Field because Russell Wilson is traditionally a slow starter. But my belief is that Doug Baldwin enters the best fantasy opportunity season of his career with no Paul Richardson, no Jimmy Graham there, and no real obvious guy that they brought in to take a tremendous amount of target share away from a guy that has the second most receiving touchdowns over the last 3 years. Only Antonio Brown is better.
Seriously, if Doug Baldwin were to miss week 1, like if it were to happen, who amongst the pass catchers in Seattle would you rank as the top player? Tyler Lockett?
Marshall. Maybe. I guess Lockett and Marshall. Honestly, like it's
crazy here.
It is. It's they're still going to sort that out. But it's one of the reasons why I am so high on Doug Baldwin this year. I have him as my wide receiver 8.
Yeah, you've got him way up there, Matthew, higher than the consensus ranks, I believe, by like 7 spots.
Yeah, he's a love.
Allen Robinson, Stefania, we know that he missed basically all of last year, all but 1 quarter of last season. You often say that if there's a silver lining to getting hurt early, it's that you have the chance to bounce back stronger the following year and basically be ready. What do we know about Allen Robinson? What's your concern level out of a 0 to 3 scale?
Oh, I have him rated as a 1, and you might wonder, well, why? I had Dalvin Cook as a 2 out of 3 coming off of ACL reconstruction, and I talked about Dalvin Cook at the running back position, a little more worried about that, and the fact that he'd seen so few snaps in the preseason, so we didn't really see him doing what he needed to do. Allen Robinson coming off an ACL reconstruction as well. As you mentioned, it was a little bit earlier, and the reason I have a little less concern, different demands for him as a receiver versus a running back. And B, we saw him doing quite a bit in the OTAs. We saw him working with Mitch Trubisky, working on route running. He was doing all of that. He was cleared for everything at the start of training camp. So there wasn't really a concern there. The only thing is I wish I'd seen more action from him in the preseason. He did play, but you just didn't see much. You saw him out there getting his feet wet. I think it was the 3rd preseason game for the Bears. And he did take some snaps, and we're not going to see him again till week 1. So I wish I could have seen more, but I get the sense that he's back and he's unrestricted.
My thing on Allen Robinson is this. I'm glad to hear that Stefania is not extremely concerned right now, and I like the player for the most part. I have 2 concerns on why I'm a little bit lower on him than most others are in the rankings. First of all, he's not the only player in that Chicago offense that I project to be targeted heavily. Trey Burton's been a player we've talked about at length. Anthony Miller has been an exciting 2nd-round pick. We think Taylor Gabriel is a good player utilized the right way. We think Tariq Cohen can do some damage out of the backfield. That's a bunch of players that are going to impact this offense in a major way this season. Beyond that, the last time that we saw Allen Robinson on the field before 2017, that abbreviated stay, like he struggled as a player in 2016. Maybe some of that, or most of that, was because of his quarterback play, but I'm a little bit lower on Allen Robinson. I've got him to 22. We're not saying, 30 or something like that, but I am a little bit concerned about Allen Robinson. Alshon Jeffrey, a former Chicago Bear, Stefania, has been out of training camp, and we have, I think, our first on the board right now for a 3.
Yeah, he's a 3 out of 3 for me. And this, again, the global injury history and the question about his status from week to week during the season, those are the things that make him a high-risk player, if you will, for me in fantasy. As for this year, coming off rotator cuff surgery, which he had in February, we knew that it was going to be down to the wire for him as far as being ready for week 1. Still on the PUP list, but is catching, according to Doug Peterson, 75 balls per day. So they're pleased with his progress, but that's very different to be out in some drills, catching a few passes, as opposed to being in contact, falling on the shoulder, doing everything you need to do in a game. No guarantee that he'll be ready to play week 1, even if they don't put him on, they don't extend the PUP list to start the season, just means he can practice with the team. But we have really no sense yet of when he might be available. And then you look at his history of soft tissue injuries that for a couple years really limited him. Last year played all 16 games, so that's a plus. But I think there's still a lot of risk there for me.
Matthew, have you found yourself drafting Alshon Jeffrey at all? Mock drafts or not?
No.
I really haven't either.
No, and it's one of those reasons why, I talked about where I lowered Wentz a little bit. It just feels like, listen, we're still early on. We obviously haven't started the season yet, but doesn't it feel like the Eagles, after a season in which everything went right for Philadelphia, they lose their starting quarterback and then Nick Foles, plays like magic and gets them to a Super Bowl, their first Super Bowl victory. Doesn't it feel like the team just seems snake bit all of a sudden? Like, with Ajayi and Alshon Jeffrey and they just, and Aguilar was dealing with some stuff as well. I felt like he was very touchdown dependent last year. I'm nervous about Alshon Jeffrey. And listen, and I'm candid about this. Part of the reason I'm nervous about Alshon Jeffrey is because Stefania's nervous about Alshon Jeffrey.
Yeah, I think we see it the
Stefania
same
thinks
way.
for me at all times.
Right, which is smart of her. Well, that's a little bit of risky business to try to get inside of your brain. But what I would say
at all times, everything I say and do is basically based on what Stefania has told me to do or say. I just want to be clear about that.
Here's the way that I end up with Alshon.
No.
Here's the way that I end up with Alshon Jeffrey on my roster is that I think a lot of the people who are playing fantasy football and play it with great passion are pretty knowledgeable fans feel the same way about Alshon Jeffrey right now. They're concerned. If Alshon Jeffrey slides into back end of, let's say, middle round 7, something like that, then all of a sudden the value becomes just too good to ignore for Alshon Jeffrey. There have been many drafts where I found him to be 20 slots higher ranked than the next best available player, but...
He's currently going in the 7th round. He's wide receiver 26. That's how far he's dropped.
Well, then maybe I go a little bit lower. If he slides into the 8th, 9th round, then you have to not ignore him any longer.
Can we play a quick name game here?
We can. Can I ask a question first?
Yeah, go ahead.
How do you change for players like Alshon Jeffrey who often are out for the season if you have an IR slot on your roster and you know that you can put him in there? I mean, do you rank them differently knowing that you can utilize almost as like an extra position, an extra player off the waivers?
So, you can... The other people can weigh in on this too, Stefania and Field can, but for me, it's player specific, and with Alshon Jeffrey, no. Because as somebody who has worked with Stefania every day for 11 years now, I just know every single week it's Stefania like, what do we know about Alshon? Wait till Sunday morning. So you're not actually going to be able to use that IR slot on Alshon Jeffrey until like 12 o'clock on Sunday. And so that's the problem is he's never declared out. He misses practice. He's limited at practice on Friday. Like it's never out. And so, yes, if I play in a league with an IR slot, I tend to be a little bit more aggressive on injury prone players. But Alshon is just one of those guys, Stefania, at least for me, that you can't really utilize that strategy.
Yeah, I would agree with what Matthew said. I thought for him there, and then he said it.
Pretty much. That's how it works.
That was good.
I agree with what Stefania said, not with what Matthew said, but what Stefania said.
Fair. Very, very fair. So let's do a quick name game with Alshon Jeffrey. Very quick name game with guys that are going around him very quickly.
Let's hear it. Brandon Cooks, my favorite American Idol of all time.
Stop it. He's your favorite American Idol of all time?
Who would be better?
Brandon Cooks or Fantasia?
Brandon Cooks.
Brandon Cooks or Taylor Hicks?
Brandon Cooks.
Brandon Cooks or Jennifer Hudson?
Brandon Cooks.
Wow. Brandon Cooks or Carrie Underwood?
I think that's right the tipping point. I'm flipping a coin. I'll go Cooks just ever so slightly.
Wow! That is insanity.
Ironic because I'm kind of down on Cooks this year, right?
So good,
that is.
It's just entertainment.
Not nearly enough recent American Idol contestants there. We need... I don't even know who's on the last
too
2
busy
years.
performing at the opening night of the U.S. Open.
Exactly.
In this podcast.
Where's some Adam Lambert in there? Hey, Secret Squirrel, who sent that in?
I have no idea.
Nice job.
I'm guessing Lee from William. She sends them all in.
Yeah, anyway, well, we need more name game drops.
So send them to fantasyfocuspodcast@gmail.com. Please send us more.
Fantasyfocuspodcast@gmail.com if you have a name game drop for us. All right, Field Yates, Alshon Jeffrey or Michael Crabtree?
Michael Crabtree.
Michael Crabtree.
Alshon Jeffrey or Chris Hogan, Stefania?
Hogan.
Chris Hogan.
I agree with both of you guys. Alshon Jeffrey or Robert Woods?
Robert Woods.
Alshon Jeffrey or Emmanuel Sanders?
Emmanuel Sanders.
Alshon Jeffrey or Marquise Goodwin Field, because I know how Stefania's answering.
Alshon Jeffrey.
What?
Wow.
What? Fields, I don't know if we can be friends.
It's one name game difference. That's allowed, right?
But it's who it
Marquise
is.
Goodwin.
Marquise Goodwin's the number one wide receiver who's healthy.
Yeah.
Wow, Fields.
I think I might agree with Stefania here.
I'm thrown off for the rest of the
close.
podcast.
Alshon Jeffrey or Corey Davis? The unproven Corey Davis.
Yeah, I'm still Alshon Jeffrey, but it's close.
It's close. I'm Corey Davis, but it's very close.
Yeah. So, I mean, there you have it. I mean, so we have a number of players that are being drafted behind Alshon Jeffrey that the group as a whole would prefer to Alshon Jeffrey. So something to be aware of if you're drafting soon.
Wow. Marquise Goodwin.
Yeah. Marquise Goodwin's going as wide receiver 30.
All
Corey
right,
Davis is going to wide receiver 31.
Let's move along here to
Alshon Jeffrey or Devin Funchess?
Alshon Jeffrey.
I might take Devin Funchess. I like Funchess a lot this year.
Okay. Devontae Parker is up next, Stefania. He's got a broken finger. He might not be ready for week 1.
Right. Concern level it too. It's this and it's other things, right? It's the player and it's the injury history. He's not even catching passes yet. He can't catch a ball yet. You can insert
well, I'm just curious. I wanted to ask Secret Squirrel this. Hey, who do you think we've been waiting on longer? Is it Devontae Parker or Eric Ebron?
Literally just said to Keith, he is the Eric Ebron of wide receivers. Yeah. Like, that's what he is. Every year there's just so much hype going on around him.
So I know. Everyone just, half the fantasy football industry just dusts off their 2015 Devontae Parker breakout year column and just updates the dates. Maybe updates the stats. Every year we're waiting on Devontae Parker.
You're going to wait.
It's
again.
like we should be a play waiting for Devontae.
Going to wait again.
See, there you go. I think Eric Ebron, who's been a bigger bust. Secret Squirrel, Eric Ebron or Devontae Parker?
I think Eric Ebron only because drafting a tight end, that position, that high in the draft.
In the NFL draft.
It needs to be such a big hit. Wide receiver, unfortunately, you have busts out there, and that seems like it happens more often, but tight end for sure.
And Devontae Parker's had moments of productivity in the NFL as well.
Correct.
So I agree with you. You're lying.
Eric Ebron caught 5 passes last week from Andrew Luck for a touchdown, Matthew.
There you go. You draft him. On your team.
Stefania, your concern level is a 2 on Devontae Parker.
It is. Yep.
And by the way, I think we all agree. Pass on Devontae
Give me Kenny
Parker.
Stills. Give me Danny Amendola.
Right.
Danny Amendola.
Cameron Meredith, Stefania, for the New Orleans Saints. We know that last year he missed the entire season because of that knee injury. Intriguing player, though.
He is, and a lot of upside if he can get healthy. I'm just concerned. This was more than ACL. It was an ACL-MCL combined injury. We know the story about the Bears had no interest in matching an offer. They let him go to the Saints. I think the Saints thought that he could be ready by the start of the season, and we have seen him in a game, but he's still not quite there to me. And the injury risk for him, I think. It's not just that he had this injury. It's if he's not really 100% and he's playing in that offense. I just don't have the confidence for him right now. So I rate him as a 2 out of 3.
Intriguing player, as we've noted a couple times on the podcast. There's plenty of upside for number 2 pass catcher in New Orleans with Drew Brees, although there are a lot of other guys there, Ted Ginn, who have certainly made an impact there that maybe we're not quite totally sold that Cameron Meredith has this job unto himself. I want to get to this
Yeah,
last.
Traquan Smith. I mean, that's what made me nervous on Cam Meredith.
And I think part of that is relative to, I'm not sure, we don't know.
Cam Meredith hasn't really been available.
Right. And I think the workload, even though it may not be a setback, he may not be at the level he needs to be that number 2 receiver there.
I think I'm too low on Rashard Matthews in terms of my ranking, Stefania.
I'm lower than you.
Yeah, but it's still, so I want to hear your concern level, and then I'll get into
I'm lower
why.
than you.
Yeah.
I think my concern level is going to change. Remember, we said that these could change. These could fluctuate again before the start of the season. Rashard Matthews essentially unavailable since May, and we had no idea what was going on. And just recently we learned a meniscus injury. He's been recovering. He's now back, expected to be good to go with practice next week. So if I see that, I will move him up in my rankings, but this is enough of a concern because of the stretch of time. It doesn't seem to me like it was a simple problem. You hear about these meniscus scopes all the time, but we don't know what happened between the spring and now for this to take so long to get resolved.
And by the way, I mean, Rashard Matthews, I feel like is always banged up.
A lot of soft tissue injuries in his past.
And so I am his wide receiver 59. And if I'm wrong on Rashard Matthews, I'm wrong on Rashard Matthews. But Delanie Walker's going to get his. I am high on Corey Davis this year as a breakout sleeper. We've seen some nice flashes from Taywan Taylor in this preseason field. It's just how many targets do we think the Tennessee Titans and Marcus Mariota are going to generate, especially given the strength of that offensive line and the run game that
if
they
he gets enough,
in.
But he doesn't need as many other players do. He's a 15 yards per catch receiver, and he's good in the red zone. Rashard Matthews, I think, is being a little bit overlooked.
So we will see. The injury concerns on me. Where do you
I've got him at 45 for right now. Josh Gordon, Stefania, is our last wide receiver. Of course, so many question marks surrounding him. Not just because he returned to the active roster recently, but because he's already banged up a little bit with the hamstring issue.
Well, and we're hearing hamstring tightness and soreness, and that's to be expected. You get back into football, you've been away from it, and this is the kind of thing that happens. But you listen carefully to the wording. We hear hamstring tightness. It all sounds like it's getting acclimated to football as opposed to he had a strain and he's out and he's rehab only. I think they're just kind of resting him to make sure this doesn't turn into a thing. So yes, there's a little bit of concern just because away from football, ramping back up already has a little bit of soreness, but it certainly sounds like he'll be available week 1. The Browns have indicated he's not going to start even if he does play in week 1, but it sounds like from a health perspective, they expect him to be ready to go.
All right, Stefania. That's good news right there, obviously. I continue to say that, listen, I want to see it a little bit more on Josh Gordon. I want to see if he's actually on the field for week 1. Hugh Jackson did say that if he does play in week 1, he will not be a starter. How about underwear, Stefania?
How about underwear, Field? I always thought MeUndies was that really cool underwear brand with the fun, crazy prints, but it wasn't until I tried them on that I realized, my goodness, they are seriously the most comfortable thing I've ever worn. They use a micromodal fabric, which is 3 times softer than regular cotton. I couldn't believe how soft these things were. They release multiple fun prints each month. Now, I know that I have fun prints with sharks on them, and Daniel tells me he wears leopard print.
Yeah, I mean, when I wear I didn't wear underwear today, but the ones that I do have are the leopard.
Quiet, Daniel.
We're still live.
Yeah.
What are your favorite prints, Field?
I'm mostly a stripes guy or just solid patterns. I keep it simple on the
underwear. You know what? This doesn't surprise me. Yeah. Matthew?
I'm waiting for some Matthew Berry underwear. Let's put my face on some underwear.
Okay.
I gotta talk to the team over
at
even Beth would
nothing says sexy time
okay.
like a pair of Matthew Berry underwear.
Let's get the MeUndies people talking to the gang over at Fantasy Life.
Yeah.
You guys would buy some Matthew Berry underwear, right?
So many ways to respond to that, but they do release these fun prints often with matching socks and bralettes, Matthew. So there you go. You can even get a matching pair with your partner.
I have a few more chicken nuggets. I may need a bralette. It's good to know they have them.
100% satisfaction guaranteed. You're going to love these undies, but if you're not into it, just send them back for a full refund. MeUndies just launched a brand new membership. You can level up your top drawer, because that's where the underwear goes, Matthew, with new undies each month. Members gain access to exclusive prints that no one else can get, and they get special member pricing on every product MeUndies makes. And you can switch styles or skip any month you want. MeUndies has a great offer for our listeners. For any first-time purchasers, when you purchase any MeUndies, you get 15% off and free shipping. This is a no-brainer. 15% off a pair of the most comfortable undies you will ever put on. So to get your 15% off your first pair with free shipping and a 100% satisfaction guarantee, Go to MeUndies.com/FFF. That's MeUndies.com/FFF.
All right, let's get to Stefania's tight ends, and we begin with Evan Ingram. By the way, just as an aside, it's a good thing that we haven't had to discuss Rob Gronkowski and injury concerns at all this season. Most dominant player at his position in the NFL.
Wood everywhere.
Evan Ingram, we talked about him quite a bit yesterday. Stefania, just an update on where he's at. With that
making progress through the concussion return to play protocol. We mentioned that was seen doing some light cardio work, so you know that he has been progressing. But as we often mention on the podcast field, it's a non-linear progression. Yep. Remember, when you're coming back from concussion. Now, we're not going to see him in the Giants' final preseason game, and the expectation would be that he's available for week 1. But I rank him at a 1 because these things are non-linear and they're not totally predictable, and so you have a little bit of concern whenever there's a head injury.
I have it on good authority that Odell Beckham Jr. bought Evan Ingram and the entire tri-state area dinner last night. Congrats to Odell Beckham Jr. on his new, well-deserved contract extension.
Absolutely.
Jordan Reed, Stefania, we are starting to get into that 3 territory again.
Yes, and I don't think this will surprise anyone who knows me or knows the way I evaluate players. I mean, Jordan Reed, it's really been just the most consistent thing about him has been that he's been consistently injured. He's missed 35% of all possible regular season games in just his 5 years in the league. It's always something. And part of it is from the physical style of play. I mean, he had a pretty significant chest and rib injury from taking a big hit. But there's also the soft tissue injuries with him. He had concussion concerns early on. Then last year shows up at training camp with a toe issue that caused him to miss almost all of camp and then nagged at him enough that he had to have a surgical procedure in the offseason. No preseason action so far. Jay Gruden speaking about how he's on track, but Jay Gruden was actually talking about Chris Thompson and Jordan Reed. If you should take a look, John Keim, who covers the Redskins for us, does a great job, posted some of the comments. And reading the tea leaves, you get the sense that Jay Gruden feels very good about where Chris Thompson is and good about where Jordan Reed is. So they expect him to be back for week 1. We won't have seen him in the preseason. He brings the injury history that he does. I don't deny the talent. You guys know where my concern is. It's the availability. And with the history like that, it's just hard to anticipate that he could put together anything like a full slate of games.
My argument is merely this. He's going in the 9th round as tight end 9. That injury concern is baked into his ADP because if he were fully healthy, he's a top 2 or 3 tight end.
Correct. He's a league winner in the 9th round. I'm not saying it will happen. None of us are, but right. Jordan Reed's upside is so immense. I think it's probably as high as there is other than Rob Gronkowski at that position. We keep things rocking and rolling here to all those listening on the audio. Shout out to all those, the old school version.
Shout out.
Listening on the podcast or listening to a podcast.
Or hopefully you've just downloaded. Again, we encourage you to download, don't listen.
All right, Stefania, Tyler Eifert, I think has looked good so far this preseason, I should say. What's your concern on him, though?
Well, it's
I've lost track of what injury he
has. You have, because, again, you're talking about availability being a skill set that Tyler Eifert, unfortunately, just hasn't had. A fantastic touchdown maker for the Bengals when he's on the field, but he comes in with a concern level 3 out of 3 for me, given the injury history. And not to mention what he's coming off of. This isn't just like a finger fracture. This is his second back surgery in 2 years. He's appeared in just 39 games over 5 seasons. Kind of, similar Jordan Reed numbers. But he looks good now in the limited preseason action that we've seen. What I will say is that Marvin Lewis has also hinted that we're not going to let him do too much work, and that there was some thought that maybe they let him try to do a little too much early on last year, and that may have been partially to blame for, no way to know that definitively, but the concern is they don't want to overwork him. And so knowing that you've got a guy with an injury history coming off a second back surgery and potential workload restrictions, the injury factor is real.
The injury factor, the limited potential of, the limited snap count. The fact that when he did play and he had that unbelievable season a few years ago, like 25% of his catches were touchdowns.
Right.
An impossible rate to sustain. I love Tyler Eifert. I think he's totally fine as an upside tight end play, but if I'm looking for somebody that I want to draft and have as my no doubt about it tight end for the entire season, I am looking elsewhere than Tyler Eifert. Last one here, Stefania, is George Kittle, another one of your 49ers who has been banged up this preseason. How concerned are you, and what's the nature of his injury?
Oh, he had a shoulder injury. He went down the same game that Matt Breida did. I mean, the 49ers had a rough outing that week because they had injuries all over the place. He comes in at a concern level 1 just because we won't know for sure that he's playing at week 1 until we get right up against week 1. The expectation, though, he's been working on conditioning, just like his teammates McKinnon and Breida, and the expectation is that he will be ready to go week 1. But George Kittle's had a few injuries in his past as well, and so a little concerned about his ability to stay on the field. They like him. They're certainly the folks who are out there with the Niners every day tell me he's one of the preferred targets for Jimmy Garoppolo. But again, the injury concern is legit.
I'll just say this. I mean, as we talk about sort of his ADP is tight end 19.
Right.
He was a top 3 fantasy tight end in the final 3 weeks of last year. Super small sample size, obviously. Right. But again, we all, or I at least, I'm a big Jimmy Garoppolo believer. Stefania, eventually you'll come on board as well. I'm telling you, this kid is special. I think that offense takes a big leap forward this year. And to your point about Tyler Eifert, I would not want to go into the season with Tyler Eifert as my starting tight end. But at his ADP of tight end 13, absolutely worth a flyer because when he's active, he's productive.
You know how we do that? You do that thing where you say that I'm looking at you when I make a comment. And I'm not actually looking at you.
Uh-huh.
I'm going to actually look at you right now and make a comment about hair loss and how you might be able to help the masses.
I don't know if I can help the masses with my hair loss, but what I can tell you about is for Hims. The fact of the matter is 66% of men lose their hair by age 35. Tell a brother something about it. Thing is, when you start to notice hair loss, it's too late. Is it too late for me, Field Yates?
No, it's not too late.
You're wrong. It is. It's easier to keep the hair you have than replace the hair you've lost. Is that hairline slowly starting to move backwards? Any bald spats yet? Yeah, it's interesting that Secret Squirrel gave me to read this one.
I can't imagine why.
Yeah, I can't imagine why. How you feel a year from now if it's business as usual up there? I ask you, do you want a bald spot to pop up or do you want to do something about it first? Do you want your hairline to recede or do you want to do something about it first? Why do guys turn to weird solutions or do nothing when they can turn to medicine and science? I don't know. For me, it was laziness. Hims connects you with real doctors and medical grade solutions to treat hair loss. Well-known generic equivalents to name brand prescriptions to help you keep your hair. No snake oil pills or gas station counter supplements. Prescription solutions backed by science. No waiting room, no awkward doctor visits. You can save hours by going to forhims.com. It is a one-stop shop for hair loss, skincare, sexual wellness for men. Forhims.com. If you order now, the listeners of this podcast can get a trial month of Hims for just $5 today, right now, while supplies last. See website for full details. This would cost hundreds if you went to a doctor or a pharmacy. So go to forhims.com/FFF. Once again, that is FORHIMS.com/FFF. One more time, forhims.com/FFF. Secret Squirrel. Why can't I get a trial of this? Can we try to turn my hair loss around?
We can try, Matthew.
Yeah.
It's New York Times bestselling author Matthew Berry with another self-serving, self-indulgent, all-about-me promo.
So I have a exciting announcement to make.
Okay, let's hear it.
So here's something. So I saw this tweet a little while ago. Okay. And, I thought this was a really interesting idea. And so what I said is I will do that. And so I'm announcing that now I'm going to do this. So I'm trying to find the exact tweet. So I give
Are you announcing an announcement? That's a very NFL. They announce that they're going to have a schedule announcement.
That is correct.
Okay.
I'm announcing an announcement. And that is, and I'll as I'm scrolling through, I'm going to try to find it. But somebody out there had an idea of, okay, so Tom Kislingbury, so I apologize if I got your name wrong, Tom, but Tom Kislingbury came up with this idea. He said, new league idea, Vampire. Normal startup draft, except one team does not get to pick it all. They just have to make a lineup from waivers. This team is the Vampire. Okay. Every time the Vampire team wins a weekly matchup, they get to swap one of their starting lineup with one of the opponents at the that they beat at the same position. So you can trade a quarter, So that's the idea. So they'll start weak, but with each win, they get a bit stronger. And so I said I would do this. I'm going to do a vampire league.
Have you ever done this before?
I've never done this before. I saw this idea.
Oh.
I've heard of different versions of this where one guy doesn't draft, but this is the first time I've heard this vampire twist on it. So shout out to Tom. So I'm going to do a vampire league. I will pick 11 people to be in the league. It'll be a 12-team league. I will not draft. We will do an offline draft. 11 people will draft. And then the rules is that from that point forward, they can't make any waiver pickups. So,
they're stuck with who they draft.
They're stuck with who they draft.
It's like a best ball league from that standpoint for the people that drafted.
And then I don't get to draft at all. I have to make my team entirely from who's left over and waivers. And then we've got this vampire. Like, if I win a game, I get to pick one player off your team for mine. So it also becomes sort of a strategy when you play me. Like, do you want to risk like an Odell Beckham, right? Because if you end up losing, then I could, so it becomes very strategy.
Oh, you can only take a player from who they rostered that week
in their starting lineup.
In their starting lineup.
Ah,
I see.
In their starting lineup, yes. So you could protect a very good player.
I see.
Because maybe you think, well, I can beat this guy anyway. So anyway, here's how you're going. If you want to play me in this vampire league, you have to download the Fantasy Life app. It is 100% free. Go to fantasylifeapp.com or either one of your, any of the app stores. And I will make a post later today. Comment on that post and I will choose random people from that post. And we will do this draft very, very soon. So, 100% free. Doesn't cost anything to do it. Just download the app and make a comment on my post on the Fantasy Life app.
All right, let's get to a little bit of just one submission for the Man's League.
One submission from the Man's League today. This one's going to come from Michael Metzger. I don't know if that name rings a bell to any of you, but I believe I deserve a spot in this year's Man's League as I was the one who created the runfieldrun.com URL and redirected it to Field's Boston Marathon fundraising page.
And by the way,
this was amazing.
And so just very quickly, Field Yates and Chapin Duke and the entire 06010 Nation raised a ton of money for cancer research for the V Foundation. Everything you raised went to, what was the final tally on that?
Just north of $35,000.
Wow.
Pretty impressive.
$35,000 for cancer research at runfieldrun.com. So nice job there by everyone in the 06010 Nation, and nice job, Field, for completing that marathon. No, it was Chapin.
I was going to say, one of us went on the injured reserve
that's
list.
right. I forgot.
Yeah.
Chapin actually did
wounds there, buddy.
Right, sorry.
Not only did this likely help Field and Chapin to surpass their fundraising goals for the V Foundation, where 100% of your donations go directly to benefit cancer research.
Yep.
But this also saved Field from having to recite the long, convoluted URL on every pod, which I am sure Secret Squirrel appreciated as well.
We all did.
In order to prove I am the benevolent owner of runfieldrun.com, I have since forwarded it to www.rotopass.com, where you can get access to all the best fantasy content for over 60% less than it would cost to buy them individually.
Oh, wow. I like that.
Hashtag double shameless plug. Hashtag I am a company man.
By the way, the promo code PLUS, P-L-U-S, gets you 10% off at rotopass.com to celebrate Insider becoming ESPN Plus.
Fantasy-wise, I'm a long-term downloader, occasional listener of the 06010 that has been running my own league for 21 years and would love the opportunity to prove my fantasy chops in the Man's League. This is from Mike Metzger, who would like his team to be called Team Run Field Run.
I'm all in on this for a few reasons, not the least of which is what he did, because it was much easier to tell someone to go to runfieldrun.com as opposed to the generic, as he described it, URL that had a lot of numbers and characters and was sometimes confusing. Beyond that, I will be honest with you. Mike's persistence is that of a marathon runner. Mike has been blowing up my email like 13 times over this request. I made it clear during the initial email that it had been forwarded, or that at least I think.
And then you were going to take care of him.
Well, yeah. I thought it was communicated that, hey, your submission has been accepted. It will be put out there for consideration. Whether you get a spot in the Man's League is TBD. But I thought that it was clear that we were not ignoring Mike. Maybe he interpreted it differently, or maybe I failed to let Mike know that. But he has emailed me probably once a day since, I don't know, Memorial Day weekend, and it's almost Labor Day. So persistence pays off in my book.
I will tell you that in order for him to get into the men's league, I also need to approve this. It's a group vote here,
hey,
and I'm going to make my vote. Are you putting him in, Stefania?
Yeah. Yes, contingent upon whatever you're about to say.
Yeah, I'm going to say it's contingent upon him continuing to email Field. So I believe, Mike, that you want to be in, but I'm not sure you really want to be in. So I think you just need to continue to email Field. Until
I'm ignoring this conversation.
You don't have to do that. Here's what you should do: just tweet at him. Let's figure. You can leave the email alone.
Yeah.
Follow me on Twitter.
If Mike,
That's good enough.
you can tweet at
Yates.
Field Yates, and feel free to
Good
leave
Twitter
many
account.
comments on his Instagram posts as well at Field Yates. So
As long as you like
so
Matthew's
anyway,
Instagram as
it's
well.
Contingent. I might take another photo of beignets. I might repost the beignet photo. People love that photo. I have to tell you, you guys said it was bad photography. I disagree. I've gotten a lot of likes on that photo.
Because you can't hate a photo. You understand that, right? So everybody has to like it is the only
They
form
could ignore
can
it,
do.
and they ain't ignoring
Wonders
it.
for your Instagram following. Follow
It
at
did.
Field Yates if you want real Instagram page.
If you want to see this beignet photo or pictures of my beautiful wife, you can go to
Yes.
at Matthew Berry TMR.
Yeah, your wife, the boss
So
lady.
what are we saying right now about Team Run Field Run? Is he a yes?
I think he's
Is he a
contingent.
no?
It depends on how many times he emails Field from here on out.
Because he's
Stop
a
it.
just
he's a
add
yes.
more emails.
He's a yes for me.
He's a yes.
Yes.
Oh,
for me.
all right.
Yes.
He's a yes for me.
All right, fine. Then Team Run Field Run.
Welcome to the Men's League.
Put it on the board.
All right, we are back on Friday. Wednesday?
Wednesday. Woo!
Whoa!
We are also
Field's checking out.
We are also back on Friday, although as long as I'm live on Twitter every day, we're day to day. We're always day to day. But
Hey,
I don't
don't
believe
steal my team name.
we haven't been canceled yet. Right? We're back tomorrow.
I don't know.
Supposedly we're back on Wednesday. In the meantime, follow at Matthew Berry TMR on every social media platform except for the Fantasy Life app. He's just at Matthew Berry there. Stefania is Stefania B87 on Instagram. It's Stefania_ESPN on Twitter. I am at Field Yates. We have some fun on social media. Join us. Interact with us there. We'll talk to you on Wednesday.
Check out the Fantasy Show on ESPN Plus. Peace out.